First of all, though, let's speak to Ivor Caplin. He's the former Labour minister and former chair of the Jewish Labour movement. Lovely to see you this morning, Ivor. Thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Good morning to you, Camilla.
Now, anti-Semitism once again on the rise. We've had some quite startling statistics from the campaign for anti-Semitism. We hear from Jewish people all the time that they're not feeling safe on the streets of London and beyond. One needs to ask the question, has this rise in anti-Semitism, I know, of course, fuelled by what's going on in the Middle East, but from a Labour perspective, it all started with Jeremy Corbyn in recent times, didn't it?
Well, it did, of course, in those quite awful 5-year period that Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party. I think it's fair to say that since 2020, that has been addressed by Keir Starmer and the whole team in order to try and make it clear to people that what had happened previously was unacceptable. And I think part of the problem today is what we see almost every Saturday now in London, for people demonstrating about some sort of idea that they should be supporting Hamas. Hamas is a terrible organisation. It's not even supported across the Palestinian people in both the West Bank and in that part of where they are so dominating. But at the same time, it's clear that what we have to do, unless the hostages who they have taken, which is now 140 people, are let free, then there cannot be any way of taking this matter forward.
I mean, you say that Labour's cleaned up its act, and I think we can say that partially, but at the same time, we've had only this week to hear Ali, who's a Labour MP, having to apologise for saying that Rishi Sunak had, quotes, the blood of thousands of innocent people on his hands. We've had Kate Osamor having to apologise for being critical of Israel while at the same time signing a Holocaust memorial book. We've also had the prospect of Asmana Begum, another Labour MP. She had supported the Palestinian Solidarity campaign, which protested outside the Israeli embassy literally within hours of the October the 7th attacks. She's also been signing Holocaust memorial books. These Labour MPs should be stripped of the whip, shouldn't they?
I cannot really believe that they still are in the whip of the Labour Party. I think this is absolutely something they should never have done. There are ways of making sure, as a Member of Parliament, that you can have comment within your own organisation of the Labour Party. Those comments can be private. I heard earlier, Kemi talking about that in respect to the Conservative Party on Laura's show. So, there are ways of hearing what you want to know and what you want to say. And there's a sensible way of doing it. But far too many think that they have to be public. And sometimes that's just the wrong thing to do.
I mean, if you're going to be accusing Israel of genocide in one breath and then signing a Holocaust memorial book in another, you're just a giant hypocrite, aren't you?
To some extent, yes, is the answer to that, Camilla. There's no reason at all for, even in the UN, the South Africa case has really been sidelined because it didn't come to what South Africa wanted, which was to stop the whole thing and have some form of a stoppage in the fighting, as they say. The problem is that's not possible because you have to come to an agreement with Hamas. And that's not possible because Hamas are not an organisation who you can debate matters with. No.
Let's move on to other matters, Ivor. We had Keir Starmer in the week accusing the Tories of stoking the woke wars. And some on the right have said, well, hang on a minute, weren't you the one who took the knee back in the day with Angela Rayner? I mean, was he wrong in retrospect to have taken the knee?
Look, I think this is all very, very trivial, and I don't think it's something that will be at the centrepiece of the general election campaigns coming up pretty soon. Look, these are things that happen, and they're comments. Let's just move on and go from there.
But don't you think that the culture wars do matter to Labour voters, not least in the Red Wall? I mean, people do get irritated with what they see as sort of institutionalised wokery. of the issuing, for instance, of trigger warnings, of taking the knee, of being forced to kowtow to sort of different trends. They're worried as well about the kind of wokery and not being able to criticise certain things, such as the obsession with transgenderism in schools.
Well, I think there are lots and lots of issues that come into that category of comment, if you like. But I think at the heart of a general election, it's a different set of comments. And those will be the kind of comments that we've heard constantly about the state of the country, about the state of what people want in the health service, about the state of education. These are all the critical areas that have consistently been part of general election campaigns as long as you want to go back. And I think that will be the case when we get there.
Let's talk about defence briefly, because you were once a defence minister, Ivor, and I wondered what you made of the comments that were made in the week by General Sir Patrick Sanders that Britain should train a citizen army ready to fight a war on land in the future. Would you fight if asked? What did you make of that statement?
Well, when I was a minister, I actually went down to Iraq for 36 hours, and it was pretty much being there was quite an experience, I have to say, and something I will never ever forget with the troops. But just to be clear about this, there is no way that the United Kingdom should ever consider conscription. Conscription hasn't worked around the world, and it works just about in 3 or 4 countries, Israel, Russia, and North Korea. So I don't think conscription is the answer. The answer is we need a better and bigger army. We had a better and bigger army, and in the last 10 years, that has been reduced by over 20,000 military operators. So we have a situation where it's just too small now if there is the need for armed forces to be taken around the world.
Finally, then, should that be Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey's priority, grow the army, give it more numbers, and maybe increase defence spending should Labour come into power?
Well, that all depends on what the money is. And I think that's an interesting area of policy, both for the Labour Party and I think more for the general public. But at the same time, what you have to do is you can't actually make these decisions now, because the Labour Party needs to actually look at the real books and then know what they can and can't do.
Ivor Caplin, thank you very much indeed for joining me this morning. Lovely to speak to you.